Welcome to the video cast today with Richard Kolko on the topic of the Olympics. And as you know, in this continuing series, we bring interesting people who bring unique stories of their careers that involve the Olympics and get their perspective on the Paris Games that are happening shortly, as well as perhaps even the upcoming LA 28 Games. So today we have Richard Kolko, who is I would call an expert in the security measures. He's both been a coach as well as a security expert in a number of the Olympics, and he's going to bring some unique perspectives. I think, Richard, why don't we start off by telling the audience a little bit about your background, a couple of the Olympics you've been to, and what was kind of neat or special about some of them.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it. I've been a fan of the Olympics, like probably a lot of your viewers are, and a lot of people across the country and across the planet are. And from watching as a young boy up to and remembering the 1980 Olympic hockey team, of course, for the U.S. going on to gold. I watched that game on TV, and now that it's 44 years later, a lot of people say they remember watching that game on TV. But we got to remember it was on tape delay. It was such a different time that the Americans against the Russians was not even live on TV. We had to wait till later that evening. They saved the game for prime time, and of course, we didn't have internet, so we didn't know the score, even though we were watching the game 4 hours later. So pretty exciting.
Well, that's interesting because I actually learned of the score. I was in a bike race in San Diego, and we actually had learned of the result then before everybody else did. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I was on a job that I was working and didn't have access to a TV or the radio, and then found out later that night. So, but very exciting times. Anyway. During that games, and I was glued to the TV again, like many people, watching Lake Placid, and decided that I wanted to try some of these events or try some of these sports. And long before the internet, I went home, did some research, and I came up with 3 sports I thought I could start at that age, a late teenager: bobsled, team handball, and luge. So of course, no internet to go to, so I had to go to the local library, looked up the sports. Learned about team handball. You need basketball skills for team handball. I have none of those. Okay. And then I looked at bobsled. Bobsled guys were big, strong, and fast. I wasn't one of those. And then I saw luge, which was smaller guys with some sledding skills. I've been a decent skier as a kid. I thought I'd give that a try. I sent off some letters, and they responded. So in December of 1980, 11 months after the Olympics, I headed to Lake Placid and found the luge crew that had invited us. And there was literally about 20 of us that came up to try it for the first time. And it was very rustic back then. We found our own housing, started doing some sliding, and got a little better and did that for several years, and ended up making the national team a couple of years, won a national championship. So was doing pretty good in the sport, but was also looking, what was I going to do after that? And I had applied to the Navy to go to flight school, and all of a sudden I got my selection came through to head to Pensacola and be a Navy pilot. And so I had to decide, do I continue to try and luge and maybe make those 1988 Olympics, or do I head off to Pensacola and flight school? And I picked Pensacola and flight school. And, sometimes I think back, but still a good choice. But a luge buddy of mine headed out to Los Angeles in 1984 as tourists, and we had planned out that trip. And for the entire 2 weeks, we had an event every single day. I think we saw almost every sport. It was a very, very well planned out trip. Spent that time in LA, traded pins, saw Mary Lou Retton win the all-round gold. Just exciting time. Continued again. I was still in the sport of luge, and the Navy was coming up. And as I told the luge folks, I was going to resign from the U.S. national team to head to Pensacola. There was going to be a World Cup race in Lake Placid, and one of the athletes, or actually 2 of the athletes coming, were from the new sliding team from Puerto Rico. People may not know Puerto Rico, competes in the winter sports, but we all heard of the Jamaican bobsled team and Puerto Rico luge, and then Puerto Rico bobsled, and lots of small Virgin Islands, other nations started participating. And before I left for Pensacola, the U.S. luge folks asked me to coach the 2 guys from Puerto Rico. This is 1987. And I coached them in a World Cup, just kept them safe. They completed the race. Great. We hit it off pretty well, became friends. And as they continued in the sport, they asked me to come back and do some coaching for them. So I ended up going and getting to participate in 1988 Calgary Games with them. marched in the ceremony, coached luge, lived in the village. Great adventure. And we had some folks there. So now we had the big, strong, fast guys that were there from Puerto Rico, from other sports, and we decided to start some bobsledding. So I helped them start a bobsled team and went with them as their coach manager in '92 to France, also Albertville, France, and then '94 in Lillehammer, Norway, and great adventures. And then I kind of dropped out of sports and joined the FBI and spent the next 21 years as an FBI agent. And that's where I got to work several Olympics, including '96 in Atlanta, 2004 Athens, Greece, 2008 Beijing, and 2010 in Vancouver, Canada. I was part of the security team on site. I worked 2012, 2016, did some security back from the DC area. So
do you have any interesting stories from your security work during those games?
Well, from security work and coaching work, I've got a couple of different ones, but one of my favorite ones was 1994. We're in Lillehammer, Norway, and we are entering the Olympic Village where we're staying. And I'm there as the coach of the Puerto Rico bobsled team. And security was the Norwegian Army. And I say, this is a prior military, you take orders, and you follow orders as they're given. Well, the orders for the young soldier running the X-ray machine, the X-ray belt, was every package, every item will go through the X-ray belt. Makes sense. Well, I'm behind a biathlete. And for those who may not know what biathlon is in the Winter Olympics, it's cross-country skiing and shooting. Okay, so they have rifles. So he is holding his rifle. And the young soldier is telling me he has to put it through the X-ray machine. He goes, it is a rifle. He's holding it in front of his face, not hiding anything. It is a rifle. But he didn't want to put it through because of the scope, and he was worried the scope would get jostled in the X-ray machine. And they were jawing back and forth. And needless to say, the biathlete lost the debate, and the rifle went through the X-ray machine. And the soldier knew that it was a rifle, as he had been told and saw before. And sometimes that's how security is. There's a lot of rules that people sometimes think aren't necessarily necessary, but it's that standardization and consistency that does the best to help keep people safe. So
that sort of speeds up the process in some sense, and nobody has to make independent decisions.
Follow orders.
Who knows what's inside the gun, or if it's really a paper gun, or any number of other things. So,
good point. And then '96. Now '96, I was at the Olympics as a relatively new FBI agent, and big event, of course. And of course, those who remember, we had that bombing. We had the Olympic bombing, and that was only a few weeks after the downing of TWA 800 out of New York, when that plane exploded. And at that point, they hadn't determined the cause of the crash. There was thoughts that it may have been terrorism. Now we had a terrorism bombing at the Olympics. So it was a very, very crazy time when that bomb went off in the city of Atlanta, right in the middle of the Olympics. They shut down the Olympics, if I remember correctly, I think for about 2 days in the middle before they got them started up again, and were able to complete the games. But unfortunately, 2 people died, hundreds were hurt, and it ended up being a 5-year investigation until they finally caught Eric Robert Rudolph in the woods of North Carolina, and I was part of that manhunt as well. Fast forward to I suppose 2002, Salt Lake City games, first games after 9/11. So of course, what had been planned as almost fairly routine games became the highest, potential security threat imaginable. I was scheduled to go to 2002 before 9/11 happened. I was on that group, but I was deployed overseas with the FBI and pursuing the 9/11 investigation instead. And then 2004, back on the group, headed off to Athens, Greece, worked that security. Again, they were very concerned, a lot of threat information. 2008 in China, a little less concerned because China runs a different kind of security program for their country. And a lot of times information sharing is what can raise the threat level. We didn't have as much information as we wanted, so we weren't maybe aware of all the threats. And then 2002 in Vancouver, and got to work there, and that one went very smoothly as well. And that kind of catches us up to today. And
okay, so Tell us a little bit about Olympic security in general, and maybe how it's evolved from, as we talked about before we began, my 1984 experience, which had some security, but not anywhere near the
Mhm.
level required by 9/11. And now with technology, on both sides of the aisle, whether you're a good guy or bad guy,
Sure.
with counterfeiting, with all kinds of different hacking, and we don't really have blockchain technology for Olympic tickets right now, but so in terms of provenance of tickets and things like that, and
Sure.
it's illegal to resell the Paris tickets apparently. So talk about, kind of walk us through how technology and security have kind of gone hand in hand since you started your Olympic experience, and of course bring in whatever coaching issues come up with in that discussion too.
Well, one of the things we all, we think back to 1972 to the Munich games that were attacked by terrorists, and the Israeli team was annihilated. A horrible time. But in those days, you could walk. Anybody could walk up into the Olympic Village. There was some fences around, but they didn't see the need for security. And now, if you really dig back into this, it's kind of amazing stuff. Just a sidebar, that was 72. Montreal, which had the 76 games, went making this up, but I'm not making it up. I think literally $1 billion over budget because all of a sudden, in that short period, they had to prepare security they hadn't expected. 1976 Winter Games had already been awarded to Denver. And Denver, once they realized the security costs, right, 2 years before the Olympics got there, they said, forget it, we don't want them. And they actually canceled the Olympics in Denver, the Winter Olympics, and the IOC was scrambling. They went back to Innsbruck, Austria, who had hosted the 1964 games, still had the venues, and they put the games in Innsbruck, Austria, in short notice with only 2 years preparation. 1983, before the LA games you mentioned, that's when the FBI created their hostage rescue team. And they did that in preparation for the LA Olympics. The FBI did not have a one single top level SWAT team. Each field office had their own teams. But the hostage rescue team, which is now the top civilian SWAT team in America, was really put in place in preparation of the 1984 Olympics. But when we talk about securing Olympics, let me tell you a little secret. Securing the Olympics with guards, gates, and guns, it's pretty simple. Okay. The venues are the safest places. They can put up all the security they want so that the athletes and the spectators, once they're inside that arena, that track, that horse jumping field, whatever, they're safe. That part's easy. And what the bad guys know and what the problem is the soft targets outside of the Olympic venues. Best example, 1996 in Atlanta. The bomb went off in Atlanta Centennial Park, which was close to the venues, but this was an open park, a large park that anybody could go to and didn't have the security. So Eric Rudolph knew he couldn't get a bomb to one of the venues, past all the police and security and magnetometers, but he could put a backpack with a bomb into an open park. And that's what happened. And that's what France is worried about. We talk about their opening ceremony is going to be along the River Seine. Very difficult to secure. They don't have that lockdown ability. All the restaurants, the boulevards, the stores, these are the things that scare security folks. They can put law enforcement, intelligence, military in charge of keeping those venues safe, and they can feel pretty comfortable they're going to be safe. But that's what's a big concern. And now today, exactly the points you brought up, things people didn't think of just a few years ago. Every athlete's got a cell phone. Is somebody going to break into their cell phone? Are they going to get hold of the pictures? Are they going to get hold of the credit cards? Fraud, AI. We'll see what happens. How does AI affect the Paris Olympics? This is the first time that'll really come up. People can fake being athletes. Some of these deep fake videos, promotions, advertising. Who knows? You brought it up as well earlier. The false Olympic material for sale, taking money out of the licensed sellers. So the litany and the list of what the security team has to be prepared for, I won't even say it's long. I'll say it's never ending.
So let's put ourselves as if you were getting ready for the Paris Olympics, and you were in Paris. And yes, there's some political differences between how France's run versus the U.S. But what are the things that the security forces are thinking about, dreaming about, creating the week or two before the games?
Okay. Oh, now this goes back 4 or 5 years that this security has started to take place. Everybody's kind of focused now. If you look at TV or read online, you read about the Olympics, Paris, Paris, Paris. So all of a sudden we start to think that perimeter is Paris. Okay, and the physical security kind of is Paris, but it's not only Paris, it's not only France, but it's global now. To do this security is requires information and intelligence sharing globally. There may be information in Paris that something's going to go wrong or whatever Olympic City, and I have no information that there's anything like that. But any of that information can come from any other country around the planet. So they have worked for years now to establish liaison and contact with many other nations around the world so that there's information that they hear about, name the country overseas, that's got to work its way back to the security teams in France so they can be prepared for that. That includes airports, modes of transportation, banking, people traveling that could be a threat. They expect lots of protests. And I'll tell you something else. Not easy, but as far as investigatively, it's always simpler to find a group that's going to cause the Olympics or any other venue harm. You know why? Because the groups have to communicate amongst each others. So they use the internet. Sometimes they have to pass money. They use cell phones, and that's easier for an investigator. We've all heard this term, lone wolf. That's what's really scary. Is there one person out there who has a beef or has been radicalized that wants to attack the Olympics, sitting in their basement, not talking to anybody, not emailing anybody, not sharing money with anybody, who's going to cause harm? And that's what keeps that security team up at night, worrying about that person.
So, to somebody who's going to the Olympics and traveling, and having seen what happened in Atlanta and seen, I'm sure, some other crises during all those games, whether, hopefully they were small. But can you think of a couple of recommendations that you might have to people who are there in order to keep themselves out of harm's way to the extent possible that maybe we wouldn't think of it from a common sense standpoint?
3 things, very simple. Situational awareness, know where you are, know what your surroundings are, and know how to get out of there if you need to get out of there. That's the important thing. Whether it's the Olympics, a movie theater, a restaurant, know where the doors are, know how to get out. And think about that when you walk in. Just be aware of your surroundings. Number 2, your cell phone, charged 100% all the time. And I recommend carrying a battery, because the number one tool you need in a crisis is the ability to communicate. There could be nothing worse than your phone running down to zero. So go ahead and buy an extra battery for your phone, carry it with you, and keep it charged. I know some people wait a day to charge their phone. They want it to go down low. While you're at the Olympics, keep it at 100% all the time. And what I always carry also is a small flashlight with me. So situational awareness, fully charged phone, and a small flashlight in your pocket. Those are the 3 most important things you can have to be safe. Let me give you a couple of, let me expand that a little bit. If you're traveling over there, go ahead and take a picture of your passport, take a picture of your driver's license, take a 2-sided picture of your credit card, and email it to yourself or save it in drafts. Because if you get pickpocketed, if you lose your stuff and you go to the police station and you go, what's my passport number? What's my driver's license number? You can say, can I log on? You can log on to the computer, pull up your passport, and or pull up a credit card so you can pay for something, and you'll have that information available. I tell my kids to always travel like that. I always do. And so do that to help protect yourself, and make sure you have the phone numbers of the people you want to contact, saved in your phone. And one other thing I like, and this sounds a little, cryptic or scary, have that code word, okay, that you can use with your family. Pick a word with somebody that's staying back here, so that if something ever happened to you, if you're in a bad spot or somehow taken hostage or something like that, and you're on the phone with somebody, you've got a code word so they know that you're telling the truth, or know that you say who you say you are.
Let's focus. Thank you. Let's focus a little bit on the athletes, and how you, as a coach, prepared them to participate in the games, and especially because this is a large festival with people not only from all over the world, but from 25 different, approximately 25 different sports. There's a lot more people. It's a lot festive environment. I mean, it's got to be very difficult to get those folks to sometimes focus on the reason they're there. And I know they're very focused and driven, but it's also easy because they're, young on the younger side, easy to get
Distracted.
diverted into a fun atmosphere.
Sure. Every team going over there wants their athletes to enjoy the experience of being at the Olympics, participating in the Olympics. What is it? 10? How many athletes? 10,000 or something?
Something
And
like
only
that, yes.
only a few hundred are going home with medals. So the 9,000 and change aren't going home with medals. They're going there for the experience, and nobody wants them to not have a good experience. So the teams, the Paris will provide the security. Big teams have good security efforts to protect their folks. They'll give them some basic tips. Little things like, try and travel with a buddy, buddy system. If you're out and about late at night, your sport is over, you want to go enjoy Paris at night, that's fine. But, have a buddy, know what parts of town are good to go to and not go to. But they do not want to overburden these athletes with these security concerns. So they're there to try and take that away from them. They're going to take that worry away from them. They'll give them the briefings that's necessary. They'll make sure they have the phones to contact people. There is a check-in procedure. All those things are in place for the teams to keep them safe. But at the end of the day, don't want them to be overly concerned, especially while they're getting ready to compete. They, like you said, they're concentrating on whatever their event is. They can't be worried of somebody trying to lift their credit card or steal their phone or, anything else. They want to be, concerned about getting ready for their event. And from what I've seen at the Olympics, those tools are provided to them so that they can concentrate on their sports, which doesn't mean giving up on common sense. If they go out to a restaurant or a bar at night, same stuff I told you. Make sure your phone's charged. Have a flashlight and have some situational awareness of where you are. Especially if you're an athlete, you're wearing a team uniform, you've got that ID on. People recognize you perhaps. So people may want to talk to them, come up, get close to them. You just have to understand where they're at, what they're doing. But again, at the end of the day, go to the Olympics and enjoy yourselves.
So I've only been to Olympics in super big cities like Los Angeles, and so Paris is really not that big of a city when you get down to it. And I know that the athletes are all out in Saint Denis, which is about a 20-minute ride on the train, etc. But will there be a festive environment around the whole city with lots of tourists being, I remember in LA that everybody in LA left, and everybody in Paris seems to have left too.
Yeah.
So it only leaves the tourists and the people, and it become a festive atmosphere. I worked at the whole LA game, so I never saw that. But does it become a festive atmosphere in tourist places, and people kind of party together, even though they've never met in the places like a Moulin Rouge or those the bars and restaurants, or does life pretty much carry on?
Well, the big countries all have their own, they call it the Olympic House, outside the gates of the village, and a lot of the athletes will congregate there, and they'll be with friends of their Olympic committee of their nation, and they'll enjoy their time there. There'll certainly be bars and restaurants that they go to. There'll be parties that they're invited to. Some of the athletes that are fortunate to be sponsored by different organizations, whether any of the sports apparel or et cetera, they'll have their houses too, and those kind of parties that all the athletes can expect to go to. But certainly the athletes will venture out into town. They'll know which bars and restaurants, they'll hear about them. They'll be recommended to go to, and they'll partake in a lot of that. But at the end of the day, after every Olympics, you'll hear, I won't say all the athletes, but lots of them say the most interesting and the happiest they were was just hanging around the village and interacting and meeting and chatting with all the athletes and coaches and participants from all the other countries. It's a great opportunity to meet folks you never would have met from other sports. They may know their sports folks, but meeting other folks. Going back to my first Olympics as a participant, '88 Calgary, one of my favorite memories was before the opening ceremony. They put all of us in nearby hockey rink for like 4 hours to get ready. And each team had their own little section. And we were told to sit in our section. We sat there for about 30 minutes and we realized we have hours to go. And then everybody was just, walking around the stands, meeting people, shaking hands, trading pins, whatever. And that was one of the coolest things that I got to do at that Olympics was that 3 or 4 hours we had in that ice arena outside of the venue where they had the opening ceremonies. So I think at the end of the day, you'll hear a lot of athletes talk about good stuff. But going back to, remember we had some U.S. swimmers that were robbed at a gas station, or said they were robbed at a gas station. Some of them will get pickpocketed, some of them will lose phones. I mean, they'll have some of the, standard small time crime that tourists are used to. So they just got to be careful.
That brings up an interesting question. Something that I've never heard is, we see NFL players having issues with the law, and we see college football players having trouble with the law. I understand these Olympians are at the highest level, but has there been much much crime amongst Olympians in the village? I mean, I've never heard of such a thing, but it is an interesting question.
Yeah, I never heard of any problems. The whole, you'll see a lot of flags on doors, showing what nation. You'll see flags outside the windows on the village, so that what section is what country. So if somebody is not from your country, your nation, your Olympic committee, and is going down, your hallway, then somebody might, wonder what's going on. But there was always a high presence of people outside in the hallways. I frankly never heard of any problems.
I haven't either.
In the multiple Olympics I was at as for security or as a participant.
No, it's not on wood. That continues.
Did somebody steal a sweatshirt or, jacket or something? I'm sure it happened, but their concern isn't that. Their concern is probably just common street crime that we hear about, which happens not only in Paris, but every major city in the U.S. and every major city around the country. And the athletes wearing their team gear, maybe with that big ID around their neck, become, attractive targets for people to talk to. We all know that, one of the ways of getting pickpocketed or something like that is somebody does a distraction, and then somebody else, so if an athlete's standing there with a team jacket on and an ID, talk about easy as, oh, wow, so nice to meet you. What sport? Where are you from? And, that could be a distraction. So that goes back to situational awareness and traveling with a buddy. So if they follow that buddy system, very helpful that they've got somebody with them that can help, check six for them, keep their back.
So let's look at the Paris Olympics, and let's put you back in the seat as if you were running the security. Maybe you can tell us what kinds of technology that is out there that should be used. We don't know if it's being used or not, but I know with what we have in terms of technology, from drones that are super sensitive and figuring those things out. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how technology and security would go if you were running the games, potentially.
Well, the guards, gates, and guns part is, it's expensive and manpower intensive, but it's relatively easy. So they can protect the perimeters of the venues, of the Olympic Village, of the Olympic hotels. That part is easy. Having the IDs. The IDs are very high tech now. They can track where you are, in buildings, whether if they're using that's available.
So they're like NFTs and hot and thermal, so they actually have
that's all available to them to use. And again, that's making sure nobody duplicates, counterfeits any of those. That'd be very difficult. The training of the volunteers is critical. A lot of the security team are volunteers, so the professional security folks have to train these folks up to not be complacent. And there's always been historically a strong interest in volunteering for the games, and they always are motivated and gung-ho for the first 10 days, but the last 3-4 days, a lot of the volunteers just kind of disappeared. So they've got to be prepared for those last couple of days. One of the things they did was all volunteers get some sort of gift or something like that. They hold that out till the very end so that the people stay. But talking back to security, a lot of we'll skip the guards, gates, and guns and move past that. What it is information and intelligence sharing. There is a core cell of intelligence professionals working in Paris, talking to all the other countries, providing information, sharing information. There's classified, unclassified. There'll be situation reports. There'll be daily briefs. That'll get passed around and shared. There will be constant threats. There will be constant suspicious packages. I can't tell you how many hundreds we responded to in Atlanta because people just lose their backpacks. They weren't really suspicious packages. Somebody put their lunch bag down, decided not to eat lunch. Well, that looks like a suspicious package. All of a sudden, you have to send a bomb crew out there to check it out. Somebody left their backpack on a train or a bus by accident. But all those have to be checked out. So you'll hear sirens, you'll see bomb texts, you'll see these responses. The media, then somebody tweets it out that, oh, the bomb texts are here, look, going through a backpack. And then the media picks it up. It grows. So an important part of this is communications efforts. So not only the law enforcement folks, but their public affairs folks, their communications folks, working with the media, working on social media, the ability to tamp down a lot of these events, very important. Then let's go outside the perimeter, like we talked about the Olympic Park in Atlanta. How do you secure those facilities or to the best you can? Whether it's drones, sniffers, going out to the subways, the trains. There'll be WMD sniffers out there. There'll be bomb dogs walking around. There will be high-profile police officers. There will be undercover officers, mixing with the crowd. There'll be countless video cameras throughout the city, starting from the moment you land at the airport or come into town on a train. All of that's available. They'll work with the hotels to find out, who's had reservations for a long time, not a problem, but any of these last minute reservations, is there something suspicious about those folks? They'll be checking passports through, computer databases. They'll be checking names through computer databases of people coming into France. A lot of things going on behind the scenes that look very simple when you watch them on TV, and the TV networks inevitably do the interview with the security boss and says, it sounds simple, but kind of like participating in Olympic sport, wow, got to run 100 meters, well, that's what you got to do. You haven't seen the 17 years that person's been, training, working, preparing, eating, exercising to get to that. Same kind of thing with security at the Olympics. There's the person put me through the metal detector, checking my bag and let me go in the venue. It looks real simple. A whole lot of work went into that before we even got to that point.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Richard. I truly appreciate it. Do you have any final closing thoughts you want to tell the audience?
I'm looking forward to watching the Olympics in Paris. Kind of wanted to go. I don't see that happening, unfortunately. But everybody who's going, have a good time, enjoy the events, be aware of your surroundings. There will be protests that comes with it. There will be apps and websites you can use to probably track those protests. Track them. Don't go watch them. Don't say, "Well, I want to see what the protest is." Avoid it. Go around it. No reason to get yourself caught up in the problems. If the trains get slowed down, find another way. Always have a backup plan. I guess that's another thing. Have a backup plan. So, but other than that, looking forward to the games. Paris should be a beautiful site. I know they've been working hard on these games, and if you haven't made plans to go and can wing it, you should head over there and go.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for your time. You have a fabulous day, and we appreciate your attendance today.
Thanks, Casey.